good afternoon, and welcome back to another round of Doodle Therapy. I'm so glad to be back, and hey to everyone who's dialing in the chat. Hey to Raphael from New York, and Eric, let us know if you need us to send any help. Hi to Natasha, who's also here from the Bay Area, and Sam from LA. I'm also based in the San Francisco Bay Area, but if you're in the chat, definitely say hi and say where you're from. It'd be really fun. It's always really fun to see where everyone is, dialing in from, and just to see, the variety of places that, this community reaches. So hey to Noah, and good afternoon if you're, based on the West Coast of the US or in this time zone. Good evening or good morning, depending on where you're calling in from. Oh, thanks to Julie for saying cool earrings. I'm really actually excited about this shirt. It's Asian American Girl Club, and I just got it in the mail. But hey to Rosie and to Mudita from India, and Noah, Alexander from Romania. Noah is from Miami, Alexander from the UK. Yeah, so we're back again with another week of Doodle Therapy. If you're new to the stream or if you haven't seen it before, basically Doodle Therapy is a weekly drawing show here on Adobe Live where it's a space for us to just come together, chill, relax, and do some weekly drawing exercises that are designed to just help us introspect and reflect on how things are going and express ourselves through our art as well as the conversation. So it's a really fun time. Usually it's very relaxing and therapeutic, I find. So if you're just joining now, feel free to, pull up a cup of tea and grab your favorite drawing tool, whether that's, Photoshop if you're working digitally, or even a marker or a crayon, and we're gonna have some fun drawing today. I'm your host, Alice. I am an artist and a muralist based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Here is a little bit about me and some of my work. You may have seen my murals and art at places like the Asian Art Museum, Phil's Coffee, and Coach. And I've also done a lot of illustration work with various tech companies in the Bay Area today. So yeah, let's get drawing. If you're new to the stream, basically the way it works is it's an interactive drawing show. So every week there's a different doodle theme or a different doodle prompt. And we'll be drawing together, and anyone can draw along. It doesn't matter what skill level or age you're at. Everyone is welcome to doodle and join. And you're also totally invited to share your artwork afterwards, either on social media. You can tag me at @byAliceLee and I'll see it, or you can post it in the Photoshop Discord. And yeah, in the past we've drawn, landscapes. Last week we painted our feelings. And I'm actually really excited for this week because we are going to be drawing animals. I personally love to draw lots of animals in my work. I see that Alexander in the chat is asking what we're drawing today. So we're going to be drawing some fantastic creatures. We're just going to be using our imaginations and drawing lots and lots of different types of animals. I think especially at this time, since most of us are sheltering in place and can't really move around as we normally would, we can't, have the adventures that we would typically perhaps go on. And so why not try to have those adventures through our work and think creatively and imaginatively about our drawings. So hey to Darius for joining. Yes, you did make it. And hey to Lael from the United Arab Emirates. Yes, I agree to Darius. Animals are dope. So here's a couple of samples that I've drawn in the past of different animal drawings that I've loved. So I drew this piece. Actually, it was sponsored by Adobe Drawing, which is really nice, of this girl with these jellyfish. And obviously it's not a literal scene like most humans are. This is not proportionally correct, right? But I wanted to draw a scene that was inspired by the Studio Ghibli film Ponyo of a girl that's just swimming along with these giant jellyfish in the ocean, or a girl who's interacting with different types of cranes. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. And I'll kind of walk through my process for how I approach these types of drawings, and we can have fun drawing some fantastic creatures together. And as we're going through this process, definitely feel free to let me know if you have any questions, whether it's about my process or my setup, or even my just overall approach to this. I also just want to take a second just before we jump into the artwork to direct your attention to this link that I'm posting in the chat. I found it to be a really great link and a really great resource for supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. If you were a part of last week's stream, you might remember that instead of doing a challenge giveaway, we actually ended up raising money for various nonprofits that are working to support the Black Lives Matter movement. And in total, we raised $1,500 through this chat and through a couple of matches. So thanks to everyone again for participating. And even though I think, we had Blackout Tuesday a couple weeks ago, I think that it's really important for us to make sure that this movement keeps going and stays in the mainstream attention. And so that's why I just want to direct your attention to this link. There's lots of petitions and nonprofits that you can donate to and show your support in different ways. So yeah, definitely check that out. And so now I'm going to just dive into the artwork. I'm seeing Vinette saying that they love Studio Ghibli and Ponyo is a great one. And that's a really great thing to point out. I personally get a lot of inspiration from the movies and the TV shows that I just loved watching when I was little. For example, I love Studio Ghibli. I watched a lot of Japanese anime like Pokemon and Sailor Moon, and I think that that actually ended up inspiring a lot of my artwork today. So I thought that it would be really fun in the chat if you guys might also share, the types of TV shows and movies that you loved watching when you were young, because I think that it's a great place to jump off in terms of inspiration. So for me, I would say probably my favorite Studio Ghibli films were like Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, Ponyo, even though that came out more recently. And I'd love to hear, and maybe we can kind of get like an inspiration thread going of people's favorite childhood inspirations. Hey to Fabio and Israel for joining as well. Israel, I don't really speak Spanish. I can read it sort of, but hola and welcome. So for this week, I want to encourage you guys to think about, if you're joining along with the exercise, I want to encourage you guys to think about an animal that maybe you want to draw. So for me, I actually wanted to draw some deer, and the way that I would go about approaching this kind of sketch and drawing is, once I've decided like, hey, the thing I want to draw is deer or birds or whatever animal, I will just usually pull up a little bit of reference from just Google Images or a simple search and try to then break down the anatomy of the drawing from there. I see in the chat that Mudita is doing a fan art of Princess Mononoke. I'm also a really big Princess Mononoke fan, so I think that this Princess Mononoke actually kind of inspired this sketch of mine, because for those who don't know, there's like one of the characters has like a deer as well, and I really just wanted to draw something kind of majestic and majestic this week. Yeah, sorry, Israel. I don't speak that much Spanish, but I can understand it a little bit. Yeah, Darius says they loved DuckTales and Chip and Dale. Yeah, lots of animals in there. So maybe as you're thinking about the inspiration that you liked, you can think about the animals that kind of call to you there. Yes, Israel, the Bambi, the mother did die, which is sad. And in this sketch, you can see that I first kind of just sketched out roughly how I want this composition to be. So the way that I would approach drawing an animal that I haven't drawn before is, what I'll usually do is I'll look at this reference image, and then I'll just try to break it down using simple shapes. So for example, here we have a head-on view of this deer, and you can really do this with any animal or any reference. So the deer's head is maybe like a circle for the top part, and then it kind of goes down to be like the snout, and then there's like a part for the nose. And then the two top ears are kind of like these like tapered shapes with like the eyes here, and then you can mark this down as the line for the eye. And you can see that just by doing this like quick study of this sketch, you can kind of get a sense for the anatomical components of what make up an animal. There's kind of usually this like this line for the nose here, which I really like. Israel says, "Entiendo un poco español," so you know a little bit of Spanish. Yeah, I don't know that much Spanish either. I did take it in high school. So yeah, hi to Nadia, thanks for joining. And so if you're drawing along, first I would encourage you to look up some reference for the animal that you want to draw today. So for me, I have like my favorite animals. I really like drawing fish and cats and dogs and birds. So usually I'll just pull up a quick reference and do a few studies so that I can really understand the gist of, the anatomical aspects of the animal. So you can see, I'm literally just trying to mimic and break it down. Natasha wanted to know what tablet I'm using. So I'm using a Wacom 22 HD. It's about the size of like a computer monitor, which I really like because the differences that you can draw on it. I also use my iPad for drawing often. And then I prefer to use a larger tablet when I'm at my desk. And then when I'm traveling, I'll take my iPad to go. Yeah. And so actually, and Vinat asks, is this Photoshop or Illustrator? This is Photoshop. But I actually think that you can probably do this exercise in Illustrator as well, because the gist of what we're doing is we're trying to break down the animal into simple shapes, and I think that Illustrator is a really great place to start if you want to especially work geometrically. Feel free to send over any additional questions that you might have about my process. Cool. And so, as I'm doing this study, I'm actually noticing that deer's ears are much bigger than I would think of, and I think that's one benefit of drawing with reference is sometimes our memories can fail us. Like, I haven't spent too much time up close with the deer, and so a lot of what I know about deers is from just like media or something, or cartoons, and so it's really helpful to do a quick study of deer anatomy. So I'm just going to do another one here. So you can see there's also this like circle, and then this more oblong snout. Darius wants to know what computer I would recommend when using Photoshop. I think most computers that can handle like the processing of drawing are good. I personally use a MacBook just because I'm just really familiar and I know all the shortcuts, but I think just whatever works best for you there. Cool. So I'm still continuing with this study, but one thing that I really like about this deer is this is a male deer, so it has the antlers, and I think that deer. I think animals are like so interesting, especially animals that have, you know, 4 legs, because I think that hind legs are actually really interesting. They're very like weird to look at because they kind of go in and then out again. But when we break it down into shapes, that helps a lot with understanding the proportions and anatomy of the animals, and then we can break those rules if we want into our drawings. Ooh, Cassidy asks, what's my favorite Pokemon? What a great question. Well, I have a Pikachu up here, which is a Ditto masquerading as a Pikachu. I think my favorite Pokemon is probably a Pikachu, because it's classic, or a Chikorita, because I feel like that's kind of like my personality. Oh, Israel says this is just difficult for you. Well, please let me know if there's a part that is kind of tricky, and I'm totally happy to break it down. Basically what I'm doing is looking at this photo reference, and I'm trying to simplify it into shapes so that I can understand the anatomy of this deer. Cool. Let's see. If I also missed your question earlier, or if you're in the chat in YouTube, I'm not actually looking at the YouTube chat. I'm checking out the Behance chat. So definitely head over to Behance if you'd like me to take a look at it. Yeah, Cassidy, what is your favorite Pokemon? Or to anyone in the chat, love to know what your favorite Pokemon are. I remember the good old days when there were 150, and now there's a lot, and I don't know all of them anymore. Something I'm doing here is I'm just kind of using the transform tool to play with the proportions, because I noticed that they're a little bit off in my study. And I like how this deer is leaning forward, and so I just want to understand that a little bit more. Vinat wants to know, how would I proportion the deer size? Is it possible to draw on grid? Yeah, you can totally actually use a grid to draw. I'm not, just for the interest of time. I'm more like eyeballing it. But one thing you could do, you can just, really quickly break it down into a grid, and then just try to match things proportionally to the grid. Sometimes people do that actually with mural painting, when you're trying to transfer a painting onto a giant wall, and it can be harder when you're working at scale to keep a sense of the proportion. Cool, so I'm gonna just go back to this first deer. So like I mentioned, I wanted to draw a bunch of deer this week, and so this is my initial pass without me really doing any kind of like anatomical study or reference. And so what I'm gonna do now is take the lessons that I learned while I studied the reference and try to incorporate that into my sketch so that I have a overall just like tighter sketch. And if you're following along and also doing this exercise, that's something that you can totally do too, is just once you have an idea of what you want to draw, you can pull up a couple of references and then try to just break it down into shapes as we just did with this simple drawing. Just do that like for your entire sketch. Hey to Ash from London. I think Ash and I met at the Mixin conference in Perth a few years ago, so it's great to see you again. Cassidy says that Charmander is their favorite. Charmander is a classic choice, and I personally also really love all the starter Pokemon before they evolve. I don't like, for example, Charizard that much, but I love Charmander. So yeah. John wants to know if I usually work on a Mac or a tablet, and yeah, I use Mac and tablet somewhat. I use my Wacom Cintiq and my iPad somewhat interchangeably now. I use my Cintiq when I'm trying to just like focus in my office, but when I'm traveling or on the go, or even just sitting on the couch or in the backyard, I'll sometimes use my tablet. I really like using tablet for beginning a piece. For example, I drew this like undersketch on my tablet, and you can actually check out the Adobe Fresco app, which is free if you are new to drawing on your tablet. And then I usually like to take it to my computer to kind of polish things up. Yeah, Alexander, I think we can link to the Photoshop Discord as well. And if you end up drawing along, whether it's a sketch or your final illustration, I will definitely take a look if you post in the design-other channel. A question that I was thinking of earlier was, I would love to know if you guys could share something exciting or something interesting or a new update that happened to you recently that you might want to share in the chat. I really think that since we're all kind of like isolated from each other, and normally maybe you'd hang out with friends or just go to a coffee shop, we're kind of missing out on those opportunities to share those little wins during the day. And I thought it'd be really fun to give everyone a chance to share anything big or small that you might want to celebrate in the chat. So for me, I made focaccia bread yesterday that I really was proud of. I made it from scratch. I moved out of my apartment in San Francisco to elsewhere in the South Bay, and moving during a pandemic is pretty complicated. So I'm really happy that I was able to do that. And a third thing I'll just say, I really want to make some Animal Crossing earrings. So I'm ordering like clay and some like little chains and wires as well. So if anyone has some like good news or things that have happened recently that you want to celebrate in the chat, feel free to point it out. Oh, Vinat says that it's their dad's birthday today. So happy birthday to your dad. Cool. So something that I also really like to do with my animal drawings is I love to introduce this like element of whimsy or fantasy to it. So I was thinking that for the deer, when I'm drawing the antlers, maybe the antlers could be branches with flowers on them instead. Awesome. John just graduated this weekend. Congrats to you, John. Brittany started volunteering as a candidate. Oh, for a candidate for her district's Democratic congressional primary. That's awesome. What does that entail? I'm actually really curious. Greg has, their neighborhood had great weather this past weekend. Yeah, we've had pretty good weather too here. And Natasha moved from Arizona to the Bay Area the weekend before shelter in place started. That's props to you for doing that. That seems really complicated logistically, so props. Darius became a Cubs fan recently and found a new style to explore in Illustrator. So that's awesome. And Natasha, I'm curious, like, how you've liked or been experiencing the Bay Area since you moved. I'm sure that you're probably getting a different like experience of it, but I'm really curious if it's hopefully been a pleasant one. Oh, Tia got 2 new plants. Awesome. That's great. Cool. So another idea that I was playing around with was I really like to add these like surreal elements to the animals. I think that it kind of elevates it a little. So I was thinking of adding in maybe these like flowery patterns to the animals. Cool. Lael says, sorry if I said your name wrong, feel free to correct me. They've been baking a lot of French breads, exploring visual work on different softwares. Ooh. And working on expanding their Kickstart art community. That's really cool. Well, I think if you have something that you'd like to share, feel free to also pop the link in the chat, and so people can check it out. Just because I know there's probably a lot of art lovers, designers in here, so maybe there's kind of a cool overlap in the audience. Yeah, Natasha is saying that they moved here with their partner and looking forward to the Bay Area summer. Yeah, I think summer in the Bay Area is kind of nice compared to other regions in the United States, in that it can be hot, but it's relatively temperate. I've spent a few summers in New York and Philly, so those are very humid. Cool. Darius says they're a nature guy. Cool, yeah. I also really love drawing elements of nature, so I kind of want to draw these deer that are almost like blending in to the scene all around them. And if you're also listening to the music, I want to give a shout out to the band Lullatone. They are the ones who write and produce this soundtrack. They're amazing. They're some of my favorite artists to listen to when I'm just trying to like chill and paint. So you should check them out. They are a husband-wife duo based in Japan. Hey to Benjamin and to Oriana, thanks for joining us. And Oriana says they're happy because in quarantine they have more time to draw, and I totally agree. I think I'm finding myself working on more like silly art projects, but in a way it's like fun personal time that I've been really enjoying. So now that I've gotten the rough outline and layout, I'm just gonna start marking in the shapes. And what I like to do here is start to just sketch out the basics of the rough shapes that this composition is going to take, because then I can tweak the layout and add in more elements if there's something that's kind of off. I still haven't decided if I want to add in a character. But yeah, and if you're also drawing along with this activity, I think it can be fun to think about the story behind what you're drawing. So in a lot of my other pieces, you know, there's a character that's interacting with the animals, and there's kind of a story there. For example, for this one with the jellyfish, the girl is drinking tea atop of a jellyfish and just floating up. Or in this mural that I painted, there's a girl who's like writing a letter on the back of a crane. So I think it can be helpful to think about like, what is the story or the, you know, narrative that's being told. Ash asks a great question, which is, outside of drawing, what's one thing that I couldn't live without during the pandemic? That's a great question. I would say, you know, outside of like the basics, like food, you know, I think it's maybe obvious. One thing I couldn't live without is probably my car. I've spent a lot more time driving, which has been a way for me to stay sane. You know, I'm in California right now, and so, you know, we've been sheltering in place for a while, and so you're not really supposed to go to like restaurants and stuff like that, which means that you kind of then are forced to stay at home, or you know, your movements are limited. And I find that just being in my car and being able to just drive to places has been a really relaxing way to just explore new places without having to put myself or others at risk. Darius says for them, it's Taco Bell. Yeah, I actually also recently started to drive. I started driving about a year ago. So it feels really nice to be able to drive myself places now and have that level of independence that I normally did not have, you know, as I was growing up. And curious if anyone else out there had also learned how to drive as an adult. Like, I feel you there. Oh, cool. Layal is building a art community for artists, and they've posted an Instagram. I think if that applies to you, you should totally check it out. Cool. So, you know, as I'm starting to kind of block in the shapes, I'm sort of thinking about color, but not really. I'm definitely going to, you know, adjust the colors and all that later. But really what I'm trying to focus on right now is the shapes and the composition, and thinking about, you know, does this seem to match the anatomical studies that I had done earlier. Wow, Tia says that they don't drive and they live in Los Angeles. I'm really curious how that works, and how you've been able to sort of get around what people say is like, you need to have a car to live in LA. I briefly lived in LA for a few months last year, and I had a car for part of it, and I found it to be kind of hard because LA is just really big. So I'm really curious, like, do you mostly stay in one area? Do you use public transportation between a few specific neighborhoods? Just curious. Hey to Stella, thanks for joining us again. Stella also just started 1 to 2 years ago, and Stella, we are in a similar age range, and I also started 1 to 2 years ago, so yeah. For me, I never learned how to drive because I grew up in a suburb, and I'm also younger for my grade. So when everyone else was taking driver's ed class, I didn't like qualify because I was too young. And then, by the time it was my senior year, I was like really busy with college apps, and I didn't really go places either, like too much. And my friends all had their licenses, so they would drive me. And then I went to college in Philadelphia, so I think it's kind of hard to have a car sometimes in a city. And then after that, I moved to San Francisco, where it's also, I think, a little harder to have a car, just with parking and all that. So yeah. Oriana asked a great question, which is, how do you handle bad feelings about quarantine, and has it been difficult to draw? And that's an amazing question, because I think sometimes I feel like I want to have like a positive vibes kind of attitude when it comes to sharing on social media, but it's really hard, during something like quarantine, where it's just, life is just different, and it's very natural to have bad feelings. Like, it's natural to feel more stressed because you have to, go through more steps to like clean things, and it's harder to do simple things like get groceries and stuff like that, and you can't really see your friends. And so for me, I think talking about it is really helpful. Like, I live with my boyfriend, and so I talk a lot about how I'm doing and when I'm feeling upset about something or stressed, and that's been really helpful. I think that I was actually quarantining alone, because I was quarantining at my mom's house, but I wanted to quarantine away from her, and so I basically quarantined for like almost 30 days, and I quarantined alone for maybe like half of it, and it was just really intense and sad to be totally by myself and feel really alone. And so I really relied on my friends for a lot of that, I hung out a lot with my dog. I read a lot, and I think just sharing actually how you're doing can be very helpful through a time like this, because I think that I felt, when I was feeling really sad during quarantine, it kind of felt like I was the only one going through that, but obviously that's not the case. Everyone is experiencing this. So yeah, long answer short is, to your question, Oriana, is I talk about it a lot. I've journaled occasionally, and whenever I've found it hard to draw, I just won't draw. Like, I don't want to force myself. But I actually have found drawing to be very therapeutic, which is why I originally pitched this show to Adobe Live, because like, for me, and I think actually for a lot of friends that I know, like, we got into drawing and we got into art originally because we really like it. And it's this like fun, relaxing activity that we did, and as kids, and obviously, like, over time, as we started to become professional artists and do it for clients and stuff like that, like, sometimes, part of that can be taken away as you have to do it for your job now. But for me, remembering that, like, the reason why I got into art is just because it's fun and I really like it has been really helpful when I think about art as a form of therapy as well. So I hope that answers your question. It's also been really surprising to me, like, whenever I've felt very sad, on certain days, I'll go for a walk or I'll go for a bike ride, and just like seeing green trees or just being able to do something different, like, it just puts me in such a great mood. So I'd be really curious to know if anyone in the chat also has things like that, where it's just like go-to activities that just like immediately put you in a different perspective and help you feel good. Oh, Vinat has a great question, which is what days will this session take place? So we are on Mondays and Tuesdays at this time at 2:30 Pacific time. We're on this week, we're on next week. We're not on the following week, but we'll be on the week after that. So this, next, and then skip one, and then the next week after that. And I think usually, actually, if you want to have a sense of the schedule, I'll usually post it on my Instagram, and you can see it right here. Yeah, Greg says that Adobe Live kept them company a few times during stay at home, and yeah, I feel you. Sometimes I'll just like tune into Adobe Live, or I'll actually, there's a lot of like awesome streams happening on Behance that are with artists that are not like part of Adobe Live's like official schedule, but are so awesome. And I'll sometimes just listen to them, and it feels like I'm co-working, which is something I also miss. Oh, Amy says that biking is their go-to relaxing activity. Yeah, I actually also find that like driving has been a activity that's been awesome for me personally. I think just having a change of scenery is just really therapeutic. Yeah, just getting out of the house and going for a walk is like go-to activity. Even just like drawing, like sometimes I'll just take my iPad and then I'll take like a folding chair, and then I'll just like, I just took it to the corner of the backyard and I'll just like sit there and draw. Like even something like that helps pull me out of this perspective, because basically I'm indoors like most of the time now. So it can be really relaxing to kind of have that space and that energy. Okay, cool. So basically what I'm doing now is I've started to paint in these color blocks. And if you are following along, basically just to recap what we're doing, we took some mood board inspirations. We tried to break down the anatomical studies, into simple shapes like this deer, for example. I broke it down into like a circle and then like a more like oblong triangle kind of shape for the ears, and using that sort of initial study, then I am able to pull out this composition for the deer. So if you're doing that, you can really use that approach for any composition. Susan says their dog has helped. Yeah, Susan's dog is super cute. Susan, if you feel, I don't know how public or private your dog's Instagram is, but if it's a public sort of thing, you should totally share the Instagram of your dog. Her dog is so cute. It's a very, how would I describe Grass Jelly? It's a very like opinionated and like energetic Shiba. Lael says they like to make playlists on Spotify. Yeah, I think music also affects my mood a lot. Cool. So I'm going to draw the second deer now. And so, I'm treating the color as sort of like a rough color block for now, but I'll probably change and tweak it a little bit more later. And I still haven't decided if I want to add in a human character. I tend to like to, because I think it can add a bit more to the story. Oh, cool. Alexander posted a sketch, and thanks for adding me. If you are drawing along, the way it works is you should totally feel free to share your sketch or your painting or whatever you're working on, either in the Photoshop Discord. You can do so in the design-other channel, or you can share it on social media and you can just tag me, or you can message me on Behance, Instagram, Twitter. I typically, so this week what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a special giveaway. So a year ago, I made these The Future is Female pins. Here's what it looks like in person, but here's a picture of it. And these pins are totally sold out, but I actually recently found a couple more in stock that I had been earmarking just for like special like friends and family. And so for the giveaway this week, if you share and submit your sketch, I will choose one winner to receive this sold out Futures Female pin. You can save it for yourself. You can give it to someone, you know, as kind of like an empowering message. So yeah, and this pin is sold out. I might do a restock later, but it's kind of like a special pin that's like near and dear to my heart. So yeah. And yes, agreed, Danielle. Grass jelly, the Shiba, which is Mint's Shiba, is super cute. He's very funny as well. Cool, so this is gonna be deer 1. Cool, and I would love to know if there's other practices that you guys might have been also, you know, doing as well to sort of stay grounded during this quarantine time. It's definitely, you know, I think it makes sense to feel a little weird and off sometimes because none of us really saw this happening, and but one comforting thing to know is that everyone is experiencing their version of it, and it can be helpful to share tips. Darius, I've not seen Muppets from Space. What is that show about? I've not heard of Rizzo, but I've heard of Lizzo, the musician. Actually, my friend Amy, who's in the chat, she's also my studio mate, and she just bought a new risograph machine, and we're gonna name it Rizzo, kind of like Lizzo, but because it's like a Rizzo machine, which I think is very cute. Ooh, Joanna has been playing a lot of Animal Crossing with their friends. Yes, I go through spurts of obsession with Animal Crossing. Like this past week, I sort of just, for some reason, I got so obsessed with it all of a sudden. And in Animal Crossing, there's this component of the game where you can plant flowers of certain colors next to each other, and then if you water them, they'll blend and form rare flowers. So if you plant like a white daisy next to a red daisy, it'll produce a pink daisy. And there's like if you water it, there's a 5% chance that the hybrid flower will appear. So I've sort of, I don't know why, suddenly this urge just like struck me to plant flowers. And so my Animal Crossing character and island has just been producing a lot of hybrid flowers, and I got a bunch of gold flowers, and I finally had to just leave my Nintendo Switch at my other place, my house. Right now I'm at my boyfriend's house because I was just getting too obsessed with it. So Noah has been practicing martial arts, watching documentaries, creating animations. Cool, yeah. What kind of animations have you been making? I played around with a little bit of animation with Doodle Therapy title in Photoshop using the timeline tool, but really curious how you've been doing it. I know that there's a really cool online course called 3D for Designers that my friend Devin runs, and I know that they just started up a new semester, so I definitely have been wanting to check that out in my free time. Wow, Danielle says there's protests going on inside Animal Crossing. That's cool. And Danielle enjoys talking to the random people of Adobe Live than their coworkers. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's helpful that, we're all artists and we can also share techniques and process with each other too. Ooh, Lael says that they've been trying to practice mindfulness, and I'm curious about how that manifests and helps you. For me, it's kind of hard sometimes because, for example, I know I feel better when I meditate, but I feel like I often don't want to because I don't know, like I'm like lazy, So I'm curious how you personally approach sort of the discipline of practicing your mindful behaviors. Yeah, thanks to people who are saying they like the deer, and I'd love to see if you end up drawing anything as well. I'll be back. We're kind of reaching the end of the stream, but we'll be back here at the same time this week as well as next week. And so hopefully tomorrow I'll have a little bit more to show with this process, but I'd also love to see if anyone ends up drawing their own animals. One thing I've been really trying to stress during these streams is like, it's not really about making something perfect. It's just about just getting to the practice of drawing and not really worrying too much about the end result. I mean, if you end up making something that you really like, that's cool. If you don't, but you enjoyed the process, that's still awesome. So the point is just to kind of draw and get into like this flow state of drawing. Cool. Noah says they've been using Photoshop and After Effects to make simple animations. That's cool. I have been trying to update my website, my portfolio website. Curious if anyone else has been trying to do something similar. Cool, so I am just going to continue kind of I'm almost like taking this picture of this deer and trying to simplify it, into simple shapes. Yeah, to Ash, my website is built in with Flow. It's a tool that is really helpful if you don't want to touch any code, but if you have an understanding of code that you can really easily update your website with. So the part that I was actually really looking forward to with this deer is drawing the antlers, but I want to draw the antlers as branches instead of antlers. Cool. Well, we're almost reaching the end of the stream, so I just wanted to say thanks to everyone for joining in. Definitely let me know, tag me, or share in the Photoshop Discord if you end up drawing along with this animal activity. It's been really fun to kind of break down these deer and how I would approach simplifying the anatomy of it. And just want to say that I hope that everyone has a good rest of the day. And I'll see you tomorrow for the day 2 of the streams. And yeah, thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you all later. Bye.